Hello, everyone. I'm Irene Arias Hoffman, CEO of IDB Lab, and welcome to this session of the Partners Forum 2021. It takes its name from IDB Lab's purpose, and that's to drive innovation for inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab exists out of the conviction that our region needs to find new ways to accelerate inclusion and also to fight the climate crisis. So being the most unequal region globally and having 3 of 5 critical global biodiversity hotspots, we can't afford not to bet on innovation to close these gaps, to regenerate the environment. And this is where we come in as an agile fleet that, as you see in this picture, it's a way of thinking about IDB Lab as this sort of a speedboat that could test out new solutions and minimize the risk for the larger vessel to pivot towards new frontiers. And IDB Lab has been designed in that way, as in a way to source and be able to take risks that no one else in the IDB Group can, and to have that sort of safe space to make those bets. In that sense, we are a unique instrument within the multilateral world to test new models and afford to fail to learn and iterate to succeed. Let's see some examples. We have the ability and the responsibility to minimize risks and open paths towards new frontiers for the rest of the IDB Group and the region with a lot of external partners. So the innovation solutions that we can co-create can actually scale in the end. And that's exactly what we intend to continue to do, developing these new markets, which is undoubtedly one of IDB Lab's most impactful works. IDB Lab, if we look at its 30-year history, thanks to the support of the 40 countries that make IDB Lab, has been instrumental in sparking multi-billion-dollar markets and industries that create quality jobs. They improve business productivity, they expand access to essential products and services for vulnerable populations. And if we look at some of the examples of industries in the region that we've been venturing into for some time, looking at this timeline on the left in this slide, you can see that way back when microfinance was not even known, IDB Lab was venturing into that. And now it's, of course, as everybody knows, has become a $50 billion industry. And another example, also in its origins 30 years ago, is remittances, which before it really became something that was well studied, IDB Lab started looking into it, measuring it, and looking at ways at promoting a more effective way of making remittances, what today is a $100 billion industry. And a third example is venture capital, which, again, when there were practically no fund managers in Latin America and the Caribbean, IDB Lab was already backing up some of those first-time managers in the countries that today have been able to source and to mobilize more than $4 billion last year, but already in this year, in just the first 9 months of this year, it's already doubled that. And we think it has the potential that by 2030, it could be a $30 billion industry, and certainly an industry where investing in some of these companies that are small today, we are actually betting on what's the new economy of tomorrow. So we've looked at having a comprehensive insight into the Latin American Caribbean startup ecosystem. I invite you all to download the Tecnolatinas 2021 report. It's on our website, and it gives you a lot of insights about this industry. And finally, today we are developing the next engines, those new engines of inclusive growth by, for example, leveraging disruptive technologies that are now everywhere, but that we want to make sure that are helping us become a more inclusive region. So pushing forward digital transformation, and also things like worker tech, blockchain, and artificial intelligence, but doing it in a way that is deliberately building new models that make the region more inclusive and do not exacerbate the gaps that exist today. And let's also look at some indicators. We need to measure what we do to know if we're on the right path. And here we see that our commitment to the region's development is expressed in not just the number of projects that serve poor and vulnerable population, but also in how that closes income gaps, gender gaps, and how we can fight the climate crisis and support the less developed innovation ecosystems in the region. It's also really important to measure how our projects scale. And we've been doing it systematically to look at how experiments that are born and proof of concepts or early stage investments have been growing and scaling over time. And in 2020, 35% of our projects were scaled or replicated, representing 19 percentage points more than in 2017. And the trend continues to go up. So this means more jobs created. This means more households with improved living conditions, more firms with enhanced productivity, and also more CO2 emissions avoided or reduced. In the areas of intervention, our focus, of course, is in the framework of Vision 2025. And within that, our main areas of expertise and where we can go really deeper are 5. Agriculture and natural capital, essential infrastructure services, which include connectivity and logistics, education, talent and employment, 4th, health, and finally, last but not least, financial inclusion. And of course, all of that with a lens to ensure that we address climate crisis as well as gender and diversity. And how do we do it? Well, we test innovative solutions, and we also work on thinking in systems, in ensuring that we're not just supporting point solutions, but actually developing the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And we have 3 tools. We have financing, knowledge, and connections. And finally, let's look at our different tools. And this is what really makes IDB Lab such a unique entity within the IDB Group and different from the capacity that other multilaterals have, because they don't have the luxury of having this one entity under one roof, thinking and producing these innovative projects with a clear methodology along the innovation cycle and the growth cycles from an idea all the way to testing it, to early stage scaling, and then later working with partners to ensure that those can grow and scale. So here we can look at the different products that can accompany across along that cycle, from a prototype. This could be a small $150,000 project that is testing a new concept. It could be a slightly more along the spectrum of the maturity, investments in venture capital funds or direct equity in startups that have the potential to address some of the gaps that we talked about earlier, and also can be, as we've seen and you'll see in the Tecnolatinas report, could be new engines of growth and the new like the new engines for the economy in the region. Now, we're going to look at also how important it is as an innovation lab to promote knowledge. So knowledge in the early stage of development of disruptive technologies is essential. And here we draw not just on our internal expertise within IDB Lab and across the group, but also in using open innovation as a tool for that transformation. And in a way, it's democratizing access to IDB Lab's resources and allowing us to find new partners that are at the cutting edge and are able to be in the local context, because this is incredibly important to be grounded in each of the countries and understand the differences and the different needs in each of the countries. So you'll see here an example of different open innovation calls that we have done with multiple partners. One of the latest ones, for example, is the Trillion Trees Amazon Bioeconomy Challenge, which we did in partnership with the WEF and OneTree.org. And there are several other examples here that we invite you to look into, and you'll find a lot more on our website. And I'll want to close with another invitation, which is to look at the platforms that we have that provide access to partner with us. First and foremost is IDB Lab Forum, which is our annual Innovation for Inclusion event. It will take place on October 26 to 28 of, so just in a couple of weeks. And I invite you to register at forum at .idblab.org. And it's a hybrid event, so you're all welcome to join it. And focusing more on women-led startups, we have a platform called We Exchange. That event, the virtual event of that platform will take place on December 1st of this year, and it's a virtual event and for you to register as well. LACchain is the global ecosystem that we've built to accelerate the adoption of blockchain across the region. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's all great knowing about all these technologies, but we want to make sure that there is a deliberate approach to ensure that there is an ethical use of these technologies and information and data, and also that the models that they are helping to create in telemedicine and so many other aspects are inclusive. And that's how FairLAC, which is the fourth initiative that you see here, was created together with colleagues in the social sector of the IDB Group. And finally, corporate impact venturing as an avenue to integrate startups with corporates and allowing them to grow faster by integrating more easily and helping those corporates also be able to stay to confront what is the disruption that we're seeing in many sectors. So thank you so much for being able to give you this overview, and I'm now going to pass on to my colleague Cesar Buenadicha, who is the head of discovery here at IDB Lab. Cesar.
Thank you very much for being here this morning with us. I'm going to provide you with 3 examples of how you can work with IDB Lab. Those examples, I think, are good ideas of how we can work together in areas that are very relevant for you and are very relevant for the region, for Latin America and the inclusion of the people in Latin America. The first idea is the very much needed innovation of paying for results. Social impact bonds is a kind of public-private partnership that really tackles one of the most important things, which is how we provide financing for innovation in social services that through result-based contracts. Under these social impact bonds and this pay for results initiative, what we do is impact investors provide upfront capital to highly effective service providers. The government then repays the impact investors only and only if the results, the outcomes are achieved. One of these examples is in Colombia, where we've been running a very successful program together with the Swiss Development Agency and the government of Colombia for getting employment to disadvantaged population. So far, we've gone through 4 rounds of pay for results contracts with over 4,000 people employed. And I'm saying not with the training or the skills, but actually employed. And with many partners, as you can see here. The most important thing is that we truly bring to the table this capacity to put together private and public sector and achieve these results that are very much needed in Latin America under the current employment situation that we face. The second example that we want to bring to the table is the opportunities for women. Women in Latin America and in many parts of the world, they need opportunities for growing their businesses and getting the same equal opportunities as men. In this respect, together with the USAID, we are developing an initiative called We3A, by which we are going to support value chains, the use of value chains for empowering SMEs of women. For that, we are going to work throughout all the value chain, providing acceleration services, financial services, developing capacities, so that SME of women can become these beacons of growth in the region and provide this equality of opportunities that are very much needed. This is an area that I believe we can find very common ground also throughout working together. The third example I wanna bring to the table is probably one of the most significant challenges that we face today, which is the climate crisis. In this respect, what we are doing is this initiative called EcoMicro. in which we are supporting new green financial products to deploy mitigation and adaptation tech to low-income farmers, SMEs, and smallholder farms. The idea here is that we do have, we've been working, as Irene was saying before, around microfinance and financial inclusions with many entities in the region. When it comes to climate crisis, the problem is that we don't have the specific products, so these entities can offer financial products and incentives and solutions to their clients, so we can really start moving to this transition to better climate opportunities. In this respect, just to give you an example, we are working with many microfinance, cooperatives, banks, and other financial institutions to provide access to financial products for buying solar panels, for instance, in rural areas. This is something that is going to be more and more important, or replacing, equipment that is really takes a lot of the use of electricity. So these kind of products are crucial to fight the climate crisis, and we are really working with Canada and the Nordic Development Fund in this initiative. So, any opportunity to work together also very much welcome. So now I want to pass the floor to my colleague, Magdalena Coronel, who is the head of the investment unit. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Magdalena Coronel. I'm Chief Investment Officer at the IDB Lab, and I want to tell you a little bit about what we are doing in the investment unit. The investment unit is a venture arm of the IDB Group, and what we see as an opportunity here is to boost the venture capital industry to help develop through innovation the whole region and close, therefore, the different market gaps that we have right now. So the venture capital industry is booming in the region. It's amazing how much money we are seeing going into the region. We have 24 unicorns in the region in the last 3 years. So even though we have the COVID pandemic, we are still seeing a booming industry. So why are we doing this, right? And it's because we have diagnosed that there's a high concentration of venture capital money in different countries, sectors, and business models. Most of this venture capital money is going into the largest economies in the region, say Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and Colombia, and sectors like fintech or different business model. So Latin America and the Caribbean needs us now more than ever. And therefore, we're working with 3 different instruments to close these market gaps and address these different high concentrations in countries, sectors, and business models through 3 different products. We invest in venture capital funds, as Irene was saying. We invest in innovative startups, and we also lend. We have debt for these innovative startups. So first one, we invest in venture capital funds. We have 55 active venture capital funds that give us access to more than 400 innovative startups in the region. We have in this portfolio 6 out of the 25 unicorns, and we work through different angles in this industry. We look for fund managers in nascent ecosystems. We look for funds that have a regionalized investment thesis. We look for funds that focus a particular sector. And fourth, but last but not least, we focus in venture capital funds that have a diverse investment thesis, diverse in sense of gender as well as race. And while we do this, we mobilize different resources like the Global Environmental Fund or the Green Climate Fund. The second instrument, we invest directly in innovative tech startups. We have a portfolio of 21 tech startups that we believe have a systematic impact and can help us close those market gaps that we have in the region right now. This goes from edtechs from Colombia to payment platforms from Guatemala to recycle platforms in Peru. We go from Series A to Series B. We co-invest with venture capital funds to actually boost the private sector in this regard. And we mobilize different resources from Google, from entrepreneurs to Wi-Fi in towards achieving this systematic impact through these innovative startups. Last but not least, we use lending for innovative companies that wants to go further in the growth. We work with different instruments from revenue-based loans to other instruments that can help these startups grow. And we mobilize resources from different funds, like our social entrepreneurship program that we have with Spain. This is a little bit of what we do, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cesar and Maggie, for covering that. And now we are going to, as I mentioned earlier, we have IDB Lab released their thanks to the support of 40 countries, and we want to hear directly from them. And thank you for all the others who are joining us today as well. And we want to be able to share today in a very open way, with the opportunity to have questions and answers from those of you who are joining us today. But to hear first directly from those who represent some of the countries that are members of IDB Lab. So I'm going to invite our executive directors for Panama, Mr. Carlos Alberto Vallarino, and for Israel, Mr. Matam Lev Ari. I'm going to invite them to join us now right after a short video. Thank you.
Innovate to improve lives in a region of more than 650 million people. This is what we do. We are IDB Lab, the innovation laboratory of the IDB Group, the leading source of development, finance, and know-how focused in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab works with diverse players in innovation ecosystems to develop projects and early-stage ventures with a potential for impact and great scale, benefiting populations that are vulnerable due to economic, social, or environmental factors. IDB Lab, innovation for inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean. Innovate to improve lives in a region of more than 650 million people. This is what we do. We are IDB Lab, the innovation laboratory of the IDB Group, the leading source of development, finance, and know-how focused in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab works with diverse players in innovation ecosystems to develop projects and early-stage ventures with a potential for impact and great scale, benefiting populations that are vulnerable due to economic, social, or environmental factors. IDB Lab, innovation for inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean. Innovate to improve lives in a region of more than 650 million people. This is what we do. We are IDB Lab, the innovation laboratory of the IDB Group, the leading source of development, finance, and know-how focused in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab works with diverse players in innovation ecosystems to develop projects and early-stage ventures with a potential for impact and great scale, benefiting populations that are vulnerable due to economic, social, or environmental factors. IDB Lab, innovation for inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean. Innovate to improve lives in a region of more than 650 million people. This is what we do. We are IDB Lab, the innovation laboratory of the IDB Group, the leading source of development, finance, and know-how focused in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab works with diverse players in innovation ecosystems to develop projects and early-stage ventures with a potential for impact and great scale, benefiting populations that are vulnerable due to economic, social, or environmental factors. IDB Lab, innovation for inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Thank you, and I'm going to introduce Director Lev Ari, who's here with us, and he's the director for Israel on the board of IDB Lab. And Israel has been a long time IDB member country, but it joined IDB Lab only recently, and we're very grateful for that. because of of course the important role that the Israeli innovation ecosystem plays in the world, and the connection between Latin America and the Caribbean with the potential that a lot of the innovators in Israel have. And I want to hear more, maybe if you could share with us some of the considerations that led precisely to the decision of joining IDB Lab.
Absolutely. And first, thank you very much for inviting me. Israel is a very excited member in the IDB Lab. And it's true, we're been in the IDB for a long time, but only recently joined the IDB Lab. And I think that there are three main reasons why it took us so long. So first, it's policy issues. Only recently we changed our policy. While Israel was very active in the developing arena for many years during the 50s till the 70s, we took a break, mainly because of economic constraints. But recently we decided to make a comeback. And the first thing that we did, and it might sound a bit technical, but we shift the responsibility from on the multilateral development banks from our central bank in Israel to the government, to the Ministry of Finance. And I'm sure for all the bureaucrats that are now watching, they understand that it might sound simple, but it's very difficult and very challenging to take responsibility from one bureaucratic authority and move it to the other. But I think that signaled the real intention of our government to really come and invest more in developing countries. The second reason is that how we see IDB Lab. And I heard you describe it very well before, that IDB Lab is a flexible and small and flexible tool that can really promote innovation. On my way here, I heard a radio interview with William Shatner, the famous William Shatner. He was traveling to space this week with the Blue Origin spaceship or shuttle. But before that, he was the Captain Kirk of the Enterprise. And the Enterprise goal was to reach to deep space, to unknown places, to boldly go to where no man has gone before. And they had a practice where every time they reached a new and unknown space, they were launching a probe. The spaceship, the Enterprise, was too big. So they used this probe to see and investigate the new place and see if the ship can enter there. So the probe was an independent tool that was able to investigate and do things by its own. And in many ways, that's how we in Israel see IDB Lab. Is a tool, a very effective tool that can pave the way for the bank that can't always try new and innovative solutions. First, it needs its probe to see if it works. And the third reason is how we see the developing world as a whole. We see a transformation in developing activity from legacy investment in roads, in bridges, and things like that. We see more and more investment in technology, in digitalization, and IDB Lab really promote that in a way that can help Latin America. And we also see Latin America as the leading part in the emerging markets to be more open to technology. And we see it also in numbers. I think that during 2020, we saw $4.1 billion investment of venture capitals. And only in the first half of 2021, we already saw $6.5 billion of investment from venture capitals. So combining all these reasons, we saw that the right thing to do was to join the IDB Lab. And actually, that was the first thing as a government we did once we got back the control on the multilateral development banks.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, we are extremely grateful that we have become, we have these close ties now. I'm going to switch to Spanish to turn to Director Vallarino. Bueno, ¿cuál es el valor agregado que para Panamá como miembro de IDB Lab ven que IDB Lab le añade al grupo y a la región, director Vallarino?
Perfecto, sí. Muchas gracias por la invitación, Irene, y felicidades a todo su equipo de IDB Lab. Están haciendo una gran labor. El valor agregado que nosotros vemos en IDB Lab es un valor impresionante, porque en primer lugar, en nuestros países necesitan mucho apoyo en el desarrollo, casualmente, de todos estos temas que estamos manejando, como la economía del conocimiento, el tema ambiental y muchos otros. Y hemos aprovechado, pues, por mucho tiempo estas ventajas que nos da BitLab y las carteras que hemos venido manejando, no desde BitLab, sino mucho antes de FOMIN, han sido carteras cuantiosas que han tenido impacto no solamente pues a nivel empresarial, sino a nivel de la economía del país, creando empleo, creando valor agregado, conocimiento, educación en nuestra población, y cada vez sentimos más ese apoyo, y no solamente en áreas, por ejemplo, como los préstamos, sino también en las cooperaciones técnicas. Las cooperaciones técnicas han sido de gran ayuda, y también ese apoyo dual que diríamos que se da, que una parte es un apoyo, un aporte del BitLab y otra parte pues es del Estado a través de una contrapartida. Entonces, últimamente hemos tenido grandes programas que hemos llevado adelante. Esos programas no solamente quiero referirme a Panamá, porque la región también se ha visto mejorada con este aporte, con estos trabajos porque se han venido llevando adelante, y ese impulso que le están dando ustedes a nuestros países con esta introducción de recursos y promover todos estos proyectos de desarrollo que nos están llevando adelante, sino que también tenemos que ya la comunidad tiene un nivel mucho más alto de conciencia de cómo cuidar, por ejemplo, el ambiente, cómo forjar una empresa, cómo cuidarla, cómo administrarla y cómo hacer una especie de ecosistema, no especie, un ecosistema real que le permita seguir avanzando en lo que ya construyeron y también incorporar a otras personas, a otras poblaciones, de manera pues que el aporte creo que ha sido muy importante en nuestro país. Como le digo, de hace muchos años, desde antes de existir el BitLab, primero FOMIN, después BitLab, y ahora pues se ve con mucho más énfasis. Ahora lo necesitamos más, porque con la contracción económica que ha habido a nivel mundial y en nuestros países, este sostén se está viendo que es el que nos está haciendo renacer, al igual que el impulso que le está dando nuestro presidente del banco, don Mauricio Clave Carone, quien en su visión 2025 ha enfatizado en el apoyo directo a la formación de una cultura empresarial micro, mediana, pequeña, empresas a nivel regional y puntualmente a nivel de las poblaciones más pobres y los desamparados, los desposeídos de nuestras naciones.
Muchísimas gracias, director Vallarino. ¿Nos puede compartir algún ejemplo reciente?
Sí, tenemos muchos ejemplos. La verdad es que las carteras han sido muy cuantiosas, no solamente, como le digo, de cooperación técnica, de préstamo, de apoyo conjunto. Pero a mí la que más me impresiona, por ejemplo, entre varias, voy a tratar de resumir porque son muchas, por ejemplo, el tema de las microfinanzas. Panamá tiene una vocación natural desde su fundación, desde que se creó Panamá, en el tema financiero, y las microfinanzas han llegado a cubrir un área que no se cubría organizadamente como está haciendo ahora. Entonces, este aspecto ha sido fortalecido tecnológicamente por el BitLab, que nos ha dado toda la, como le digo, la cooperación técnica, préstamos, unos reembolsables, otros aportes, y ya las empresas están viendo frutos porque estos son préstamos que le llegan directamente a la gente más necesitada y se controlan adecuadamente, cumpliendo con leyes, eficiencia y demás. Por otra parte, en el tema de economía, por ejemplo, del conocimiento, también me impresiona porque hay varios proyectos que en este terreno pues también no se avanzaba a una velocidad mayor, y ahora vemos un movimiento hacia esa nueva inquietud en Panamá. Y esto pues se da en el tema de la salud, por ejemplo, en el tema agropecuario, en el tema tecnológico, hay mucha inventiva. Bueno, como sabemos, toda esta, diríamos, la economía del conocimiento tiene que ver con aquellas empresas que realmente hacen uso masivo, un uso intensivo de lo que es el conocimiento para su producción, para su crecimiento y para su desarrollo. Entonces, eso se está dando en Panamá, esa nueva corriente, y ya están incorporándose no solamente empresas, sino instituciones, organismos diferentes, y creo que ese movimiento pues surgió más impulsado ya sea por el Big Lab. Bueno, hay otros muchos ejemplos que no quisiera monopolizarle, ¿no?
No, algunos de esos ejemplos me recuerda la última visita a Panamá y que vimos a Flying Labs, de una escuela de robótica.
Así es.
Y realmente con un impacto tangible en el terreno, mejora en la gestión de recursos, de residuos, en este caso era con drones. Y así que, bueno, muchas gracias por compartir estos ejemplos. Quisiera volver al director Levarí así que voy a volver a cambiar al inglés. And kind of look into the future. ¿No? Where do you see IDB Lab growing, developing to, and what is the potential of collaboration, of even greater collaboration with Israel?
So I think that IDB Lab should and IDB Lab will deal with the most pressing challenges that the region will face. And I can share some few examples we'll take climate change. We have an issue, a global issue to work with climate change and address that problem. We see it everywhere. But I think that these days we understand more and more how innovation is so crucial to address this problem, because all the classic solutions that we use are not always they not always can work in our region, and we need to think out of the box. I heard a fascinating talk about food and the food tech. For example, I learned that the emission that goes from the food industry is equivalent for the emission from transportation. So if we'll be able to address that, we are going to contribute substantially for reducing emission. That's part of what exactly IDB Lab can do. Try new approaches and think out of the box to solve big problems. And there are many other examples. We can see it also in fintech, that we can use technology to reach out to the most vulnerable and population that are far from the city, are disconnected from any financial means. And we can use this technology to reach out and connect them again. And I can talk more and more about examples, but I think that's pretty much the way how I see IDB Lab trying to solve big problems with solutions that were not being tested before, and see if we can scale it up afterwards into more substantial investments coming from the bank.
Thank you so much for hearing your perspective. It's really useful, and I want to. So we're going to open it up to engage with all the partners and potential partners who are here with us today. Just before opening it up, I wanted to make a sort of a summary of how to partner. And Director Vallarino, Director Levarí, you've touched on some of the ways we have partnered, in addition to becoming a full member of IDB Lab, which is, of course, the number one way of partnering. We can also partner in other ways. We can co-create and co-finance thematic funds. Cesar earlier talked about Ecomicro. That was a great partnership with NDF, for example, and with Canada. Third, we can look at the secondment of professionals. Actually, we have benefited from our colleague here, Barben Yakov, who, by the way, has been part of making this session possible, and he's a secondee from the Israeli government. And those secondments are extremely valuable in terms of then creating better ties and have multiple perspectives and more diversity also within IDB Lab. And fourth, a type of potential way of partnering is also to fund knowledge agendas. So if any of you who are here from the various countries are interested in a particular knowledge agenda, that's one great way of partnering. Like I said, as an innovation lab, it's extremely important for us to generate knowledge and to apply that knowledge into and those learnings into what we do and to disseminate that. So, for example, in terms of inclusive finance, City Foundation did that with us, but also Cesar mentioned with the government of Switzerland, the work that we did with social impact bonds, including, most importantly, a knowledge piece, which was a rigorous evaluation that gave us the confidence to know that the instrument actually works and how it can work and what are the best ways to make it successful in replication. And now it's been replicated in 5 countries. So those are the 4 ways that we wanted to invite you to think about in terms of partnering with IDB Lab, becoming a member, co-creating, co-financing thematic funds, seconding professionals, and funding knowledge agenda. So now I'd love to hear from those of you who are connected. I know that, for example, one of our partners from Singapore, Pat, is with us today, and it's a great example of how we have collaborated in the knowledge and the connection agenda through the Singapore FinTech Festival. So maybe, we'd just like to hear from those who are connected, and perhaps as a start, invite Pat, if you want to share a few words.
Hi, Irene. This is Miguel. I would like to thank you for your presentations, and also the directors for their opinions. What I would like to ask everybody is to make any question they may want through the different chats, and also for those that are with us in the main stage, just to request through the chat to be able to get voice and image. While we connect with Pat and any other speaker, I would like to make you a first question, Irene, that we got. And the question is, if a government does not have the budget that some other countries have, so they are very selective in what they fund, while the IDB Lab seems to be quite a large fund, what kind of additionality could have this little funding if it goes through the IDB Lab?
That's a good question. Thank you, Miguel, for passing on that question. I think some of the modalities of partnering that I mentioned just earlier could work. Going deeper into a specific area that is of interest, where maybe a small amount can go a long way in terms of, for example, generating knowledge or co-financing a specific thematic fund where we could have a particular impact in, for example, innovative climate finance in the Caribbean. Those are some examples, but also invite the directors to add anything you wish on this topic.
Yes. Ahí me gustaría tocar un tema que creo que se me quedó en el tintero, Irene. El tema que se me quedó en el tintero es que hay un movimiento muy importante que se está iniciando, pues, promovido por la presidencia del BID. Primero, la sinergia esta que tenemos entre el BID Lab y el BID Invest. Nosotros funcionamos como un sistema. Uno financia al otro a los proyectos de BID Lab ya maduros, y el BID, pues, es el principal promotor en todos los países y los atrae para que participemos. Pero hay un proyecto que es muy importante que ha desarrollado y que ha impulsado, pues, el presidente, y es el nearshoring. El nearshoring, que no es más, pues, que una tercerización de servicios En los otros países como los nuestros, como Panamá, pues lo que lo está aprovechando. Recientemente vinieron 4 ministros a visitar el BID y a hablar con él porque tenían interés en el apoyo no solamente de BID Lab, sino de BID Invest para llevar adelante este proyecto de nearshoring, que son pues estas tercerizaciones que empresas pequeñas o medianas se instalan en nuestros países para darle servicio a los países industrializados. Y entonces estamos, por ejemplo, en el caso de Estados Unidos, y Estados Unidos está aprovechando para incentivar en México y en Centroamérica y en Sudamérica la instalación de estas nearshoring a fin de que produzcan refacciones, piezas, partes, incluso partes de vestimentas, etcétera, y se da una producción muy grande, valor agregado en nuestros países, se producen ingresos, empleo, que es lo más importante, bien remunerados, y llevamos adelante exportaciones, entre muchos otros beneficios. Entonces, este impulso, este nuevo movimiento, lo estamos apoyando y ya sabemos pues que nos va a dar muchos réditos porque obviamente hay una necesidad y somos competitivos desde el punto de vista que las demás empresas nearshoring que hay en otras latitudes, por ejemplo, como en Asia, le son más caras a los Estados Unidos por la distancia. Aquí estamos a un lado de lo que es pues, el centro de producción más industrializado que es los Estados Unidos, y es más fácil aprovechar esa ventaja. Y nosotros mucho más porque tenemos los puertos, el canal y prácticamente todo pasa por ahí. Dicho sea de paso, la cuenca del canal también ha sido beneficiada con los programas del BID Lab en las investigaciones que se han llevado adelante a través de algunos grupos, la creación de jóvenes para conservar la cuenca del canal desde el punto de vista científico, de investigación y de acción también. Así que quería agregarle esto.
Qué buen ejemplo, director. Muchísimas gracias. Y efectivamente, Mauricio ha dado un impulso enorme a esta integración mayor todavía entre las tres partes del grupo, el BID Invest y BID Lab, y tenemos ya muchísimos ejemplos de continuum, ¿no? Y de continuum en todo el ciclo de financiamiento, en las diferentes etapas de madurez de compañías, compañías como Cargo X, por ejemplo, que han revolucionado el sector logístico, en este caso en Brasil, y que originalmente en una etapa más temprana financió BID Lab y después el BID Invest ha seguido financiando en una etapa más madura. Así que muchísimas gracias, y también creo que enlaza muy bien con el ejemplo que César dio antes de cadena de valor y del foco que le podemos poner en empresas y en pymes lideradas por mujeres que pueden beneficiarse de esa integración regional. Así que muchísimas gracias por ese ejemplo. Vamos a pasar a alguna otra pregunta y participación de la audiencia. Adelante.
Yes, and Irene, and before giving the word to Esther with a different question for the audience, I want to remind everybody that if you want to keep learning about the IDB Lab, we are going to have a second session at 11 a.m. EST, Washington, D.C. time, on how entrepreneurial innovations can drive economic and social transformation. So you are more than welcome to attend. Esther, please go ahead with the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Hola, Esther.
Lovely. Sorry, my camera is not working. From the chat, we have received a question. Could a country deploy blended finance resources through the IDB Lab, where they can assume a first loss as long as the IDB Lab can then leverage the funding?
That's a great question, and the short answer is yes. Maggie earlier, as head of investment, mentioned the three main financing products that we deploy, investing through funds, direct equity investments, and also lending. Particularly in this third category, we can and we have looked into models like, for example, in Guatemala for the agricultural sector, a risk-sharing facility that indeed included a first loss. So very welcome to follow up specifically. I think this session is an opportunity to engage and to generate leads, which we will be very keen to follow up with bilaterally with each of you. Esther, back to you.
And I believe we have, Esther, one more question from Singapore through the chat.
Okay.
I'm not seeing it in the chat.
Yeah. So, gracias, Esther. I think
maybe Bar
we
has
would love.
it?
Thank you, Esther. We would love to continue, and but I think our time is up. So, thank you again. We will, as Miguel said, share more with all of you, and we invite you to first register for the Big Lab Forum, October 26 to 28. To learn much more hands-on about a lot of these examples. And I really want to thank Director Levaria and Director Vallarino for having shared with us today, and for all of you too for joining this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.